The best wireless video system I own barely leaves my bag, and the one I actually use costs a fraction of the price. I'm Eric D. Seals, a documentary director and DP, and I've run wireless video on sets with ESPN, Independent Lens, and PBS, and today I'm putting both side by side. First, the honest spec sheet where one of them clearly wins, then why the more expensive one loses to the cheaper one on almost every job that I shoot. And the real reason is not the price, it's something the spec sheet can't show you. So here's the setup. I own a Teradek and I own a Hollyland. And if you only read the numbers, this is the shortest video on my channel because one of them wins in a clean way. But I've been on enough documentary shoots to know the numbers that actually matter versus the ones that are just on the box. If you shoot documentaries and you do run and gun interviews, anything where a small crew needs to see the frame, stick with me. By the end, you'll know exactly which one to buy for the work you actually do. So let's start where every review starts, on paper. And on paper, it's not even close. The Teradek system, it sends an uncompressed signal with less than a millisecond of delay, basically real time. My Hollyland is a Pyro 7, and it runs on Wi-Fi at 60 milliseconds. 60 milliseconds sounds tiny, but if someone is pulling focus off that monitor, the gap is a whole game changer. And the Teradek isn't really using Wi-Fi at all. It has dedicated hardware built for one job, and it holds a signal in rooms full of interference that make the cheaper systems fall apart. My Hollyland, on the other hand, is sharing the same Wi-Fi lanes as every phone that's in the room. Now, the part that stings, a Bolt 4K setup starts around $2,000 and it climbs from there. And mine doesn't even have the screen, even though they do have some that has a screen, but those are even more expensive. So I've got a small HD that I use that's connected with it at all times, which is another chunk of my money. But my Pyro 7 was around $800 and the screen is built in because it's a transceiver. So if this was a spec sheet contest, we'd be done with the video right here. It has lower latency, it's more reliable, it's built like a tank. Buy the Teradek, video over. Subscribe so you never miss a video. It's the one connection on this channel with zero latency, unlike my Hollyland. But the spec sheet isn't the shoot, and the shoot is the only thing that pays me. So here's why the cheaper system is the one that's clipped to my rig almost every documentary that I make. Here's what the numbers don't tell you. On a documentary set, I'm almost never having anybody pull focus from me wirelessly from a monitor. My clients aren't either. They just want to see the frame and what it looks like. One of the great things that I love about my Hollyland transceiver set is it's an all-in-one package. It has the monitor, it can be a transmitter, it can be a receiver. It can do both, which makes it very flexible in my workflow. It has built-in handles that it makes it easier to hold, and I can put a V-mount on the back. It didn't come like that because I think it had the Sony NFP batteries, but the V-mount adapter plate can be swapped in, and that's what I used it for. And it makes it a really tight package that's easy to use in the field. One box, it's light, the client likes it, they get the feed, I can send it to a PA, I can give it to a producer in another room. Because of how light it is, clients are constantly complimenting how easy it is to use, and it just makes them feel more confident because they can see the image as we're capturing it, and also allows them to give notes. Now, it's not that you can't do that on a Teradek, but this is just a very compact system, and that means that I bring it to more situations. Now, Teradek does have a built-in wireless system that looks similar to the Hollyland, and it probably maybe even came out first or second, I don't know. But the point is that is 4 times as much. It costs way more. And while I would love to have it, I just can't justify the price because most of my clients don't need that level of, I won't say quality, but the latency doesn't bother them as much for most of my shoots. The integrated director's monitor, hands down, is one of the biggest reasons that I like this system. I think it's one of the best setups, and it's just really simple and easy to use. Now, if it's so good, why do I still own the Teradek? And the reason is because while the Hollyland has a lot of benefits, there's a lot of things that it can't even hold close to the Teradek. Here's where the Hollyland makes me pay, and this is where the Teradek earns every dollar. When it comes to build quality, there is no comparison. While I love my Pyro 7, it is not built for long-term production. I've owned it a quarter of the time that I've owned the Teradek, and I'm not gonna lie, it's starting to break down. The connection for the antennas is loose. There's just parts of it that are just starting to creak and crack. And honestly, I can start to see the difference of the cost that I spent on it. And that's to no surprise. Something that costs $800 or $2,000 is gonna have a quality difference, or at least it should. While my Teradek, much older, I got it like several years before I got the Hollyland, and it's still built like a tank. So the build of the Hollyland is a lot weaker. Nothing stays tight on it like I need it to. The other thing to keep in mind with the Hollyland receiver is anytime you have a product that can do multiple things, it can never do all of them very well. And so, yes, it can transmit and it can receive a signal. It can send it to phones, which is very helpful. I can send it to iPads. But the image on the receiver, the monitor, the actual monitor is kind of weak. I mean, when I compare it to my small HD, there's just no comparison. And that's one of the things that's a big deal because I'm using it to figure out what the image needs to look like for a documentary. So that's where I usually have the battle, if I have my small HD on there or if I have my transceiver Pyro 7 on there. When it comes to range, it doesn't do as well through different walls. Teradek sends a much better signal when you compare the two of them, but there's not too many times that I need to send it through like 8 brick walls, so it doesn't bother me as much. But the overall feel of the Pyro 7 feels more of like a consumer product, not a professional product. It's not built for production in the same way that the Teradek does. So one issue that I had with the Pyro 7 is I was on a set and it really matters who's in the room. So I had a producer who's used to being on documentary sets and she was in the same room that the person was being interviewed. And she was looking at the monitor and she said, hey, there's something wrong with the monitor. There's lip flap, which means that the audio was not in sync with the person that's really speaking in the room. And what she was noticing was the latency. Now, if you have a Teradek, you're not going to see that because it's crystal clear, however many milliseconds that it has. But when it comes to the Hollyland, there's definitely a gap. Some clients who are not familiar with seeing the consistency between that latency, they don't even think twice about it. But if you have a trained eye that's used to seeing it, that becomes a problem. And unfortunately, I couldn't do anything about it at that point, but that's something to keep in mind. If someone needs a pull focus, it's definitely not the route to go, at least the version that I have. The thing that you have to keep in mind is when a producer hires you, they pay for quality, not for explanations. The other thing that I don't like about the Hollyland is that since it is a all-in-one, it's a monitor and a transmitter, I can't send a clean feed to my client. So when I'm filming, I like or many of us use, it's called the dirty feed. So it's the feed of the image that we're capturing and it has all my information on it because that's what I use as tools to make sure that I'm capturing the image right. But when I send something to a director or a producer or a client, I want them to have a clean feed, which means they have nothing on the screen but the image that they're looking at. So when I had the Teradek, when I have two different systems, my monitor and my transmitter, I would send the dirty feed to my monitor and the clean feed to the transmitter that's going to the client. But when I have a Hollyland transceiver that has my monitor and my transmitter in there, the problem is I have to send them the feed that I would usually use, and it doesn't help me because it gives me less options. Overall, the Hollyland build quality is not the best. I'm sure they're gotten better over time, but the one that I purchased is just okay. So the Teradek is better, more reliable, lower latency, it splits my feeds, and I still reach for the Hollyland almost every time. And there's one reason, and it's the whole point of this video. So earlier I mentioned how is it that the more expensive one isn't the one that I'm using on a regular basis and yet happen to be reaching for the cheaper one. And that's the whole purpose of this video. The reason I reach for the Hollyland the most is because it has the least friction in letting me create and share the current image I'm capturing with my client or anybody else on my team. That's it. Not cheaper, not sharper. The Teradek wins in almost every one of those categories, but the Hollyland gets out of my way and allows me to focus on the story. It lets me light, frame, adjust, and share what I'm seeing with the fewest steps in between me and the shot. The functionality and the option it gives you, I think it just makes you a better filmmaker with that wireless system. The best gear isn't the gear that wins the spec sheet. It's the gear that disappears so you can do the work. That's why the better system stays in my bag, and I still own it for the day that the work demands it. I still own it and I still use it, But when I need less friction, I happen to go for this one a little bit more.